It's all possible.
Oh, absolutely.
It's only the mountain is me. It's the
Yeah,
only for
I was
sure.
gonna say, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah. Thanks for inviting me. I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for coming on.
Yeah.
I actually found you because your branding is great and you're one of the first couples therapists that will come up on Google if you're searching for couples therapists around Raleigh.
Okay.
And I signed up for your email course, which
Yeah.
was all great.
Okay.
And the videos were wonderful, even though, as you're saying, they
Yeah.
are from maybe
Yeah.
5 years ago.
Yeah.
But
I don't know what I
yeah,
was trying to do with the video there. It was like, I look back, I'm like, what were you doing here? Like,
sure.
yeah.
I know. But
The
hey,
content is good.
the
Yeah.
content's great. Yeah, the content stays relevant.
Yeah.
Yeah. How did you get into couples work?
So, my background, I grew up in the church world and went to divinity school and took all that stuff. And I was a musician as well and had a minor in music. My initial career was working with people in the church world. When I left that world, the thing that I valued the most was walking with people through their things. And, that's anyone that there's so many types of therapists. There's bartenders, there's, got hairstylists, pastors, and people that work in those fields because people always want someone that can sit with them and maybe listen to what they're going through. So when I thought, well, what do I want to do for the rest of my life? I remember I went to Barnes and Noble, which actually ended up being a manager of Barnes and Noble first,
Okay.
while I was in grad school. Because it was funny that I went to a Barnes and Noble to take this competency test or a career test. I forget what it was now. And of course, this is long enough ago that it was a book.
Yes.
Like it had disc and you put the disc in. I can't even believe you probably can't even find that now. Everything's going to be a link, right? But I went in there and said you could be. So the three things that kicked out for me was clergy. I was like, well, I just did that. I don't want to do that anymore.
Yeah.
Lawyer or psychologist or psychotherapist.
Those are three very different things.
Yeah, but they relate, I think, to
Mhm.
personality and skill set and maybe, drive or whatever. But I actually thought of a lawyer first, but then there was a group of students that were from Campbell that would be in our Barnes Noble store studying. And I asked them about it and I was considering looking into it. And they're like, well, you have a family and young kids, right? At the time, I think my girls were in middle school. I have 3 daughters.
Okay.
And I'm like, yeah. And they're like, listen, like, you're not going to see your family for like 2 years if you do this.
Mhm.
And I was, that was a good word, I think, from people that were like, and I didn't think it'd be great, right? So like, it's just sort of like, that would probably be bad on that, right? So I leaned into the psychotherapy thing and I went to Capella University just because it was the only online institution that I could like be flexible with.
Sure.
So I could work full time. So I had to work like, my regular work week and then do school on top of it.
That is a lot.
It was a
So
lot. So that's how I
family,
get into it. Yeah.
yeah. So family, work, school.
Yeah.
Why couples?
Yeah, that's interesting. I think I'm drawn to it because there's a real practicality to the work. When you're in school, the old models they're very sensitive to making anyone codependent on you and the therapist, right? So they like non-directive work and they like, that's where the whole and how does that make you feel come from, I think, I think there's room for that, but I also think it's sort of built in that Freudian world where you know, the ethics of things, were the thinking was different. And most work was on the individual, and they're also thinking about people with severe mental illnesses that you are trying to build their efficacy, right? You are trying to like help them get somewhere different. But that philosophy doesn't really work in my mind for most people, right? I'm sure there's places where it should be used, and could be abused, obviously. But I actually think people want to be told what to do. I actually think that people need solid advice from someone who's thought through it and has experience and they need a plan.
Mhm.
Like when I have a couple come in for a crisis, the best thing they walk out of there is that we have a plan
Yeah.
and they feel solid about that. You think this can be fixed? I usually say, if you do what I tell you to do, it'll be fixed. And
That's
yeah,
great.
it gets them to laugh and but it's obviously I don't mean it as egotistically as it sounds, but it's a little like speaking into their life, like, well, yeah, you gotta do the work. I've given you this plan and it works pretty good.
What do you think hinders people from doing the work outside of the therapy room? Because I see clients who can do beautiful work
Mm.
on the couch in the office, metaphorically, whether that's virtually or in person. And then something happens outside where it doesn't translate, or where it starts to fall apart, or we have the same conflict and we don't know how to resolve it.
Uh, I mean, I guess it's the same thing that stops us all is that, do we really want change? And will we allow ourselves the fear that comes with change? Because even good change, the brain doesn't like that. Ever since for me, I really try to think through everything now through as the brain in motion, the brain in action. And we could get really abstract with things, but I was trying to bring it back to the idea like, well, even, the brain's lazy because in the sense it's addicted to certainty. And so I think that's why people like, well, this is the devil I know. And it's really scary to think about change, even if it's good. So like, I love to tell the story about are you an LMFT so I don't know if you heard this story in your world, but in systems thinking, right? I'm a licensed marriage and family therapist, which harps on systems thinking, but now most people think that way now, I think. But it was unethical to treat more than one person in a room at a time during the 1930s and 40s. And it was like saw as like not a valid treatment center. So especially like schizophrenics would go to the hospital, they get better, they get medicated, they do therapy, they go back to their house, right?
Mm.
And then they get sick again. And part of that is the family unit, the people that have interacted with this person for years, they can't accept the change. My understanding is that many of the people broke the rules and started seeing the family. The system had to be treated. The way I saw that work in a more modern thing was treatment for anger management. One of my residencies was at Triangle Family Services
Oh, yeah.
downtown, and they had the DOSE program,
Yeah.
developing opportunities for a safe environment. It's an anger management program that people are mandated to. So something happened, they've gotten some domestic violence charge, and usually it's their first offense. The judge probably gives them a choice. You can spend 3 months in jail or you can go to 12 months in group therapy. Most people are going to choose the group therapy. Doing that work, it was great. I was a resident, so I was in charge of it, but I was learning and it was on my team and I could lead some things under the guidance of supervision and stuff. But it's a great program. People come out of there, they learn the difference between guilt and shame. They recognize that they've done abusive things, but they're not an abuser, which is why I think the program's called Man and Abusers, right? I don't like that. It's like, that's not true. You're not the sum total of your mistakes, especially if you move into guilt and own it and make amends and know that you can change. So you do that good work with people that graduate. It's like a verbal test to get out of the course. So that's really powerful, but then they go home and they're in an interaction with their partner. And that partner's like not letting them walk out the door to calm down because they don't know the rules. They're doing everything they can to de-escalate themselves. They've got this tool now, but the other person's like, what the hell are you doing? And who the hell are you? And no, right? So then they get very like defeated because, everyone needs to be taught why this is important. And so that's what I like about with relationships and couples is, I mean, there's so many people that get sent to therapy by their partner. I have individuals come to me and I said, who sent you? Or it's
Yeah.
usually she sent you, right?
Uh,
Yeah. And the guy's like, yeah, I'm coming here because she told me if I'm not coming to this, she might leave or something. Normally we do the work, but like, but both people need to be there.
yeah.
Even for the individual stuff, right? Now I do treat people individually, even within relationships, but in the context of most everyone is coming for relationship stuff, if you could treat both people and get them, even if like the session was all about something that happened to you in your childhood and you're coming to this great place, that's so much different if your partner's there witnessing it as part of the experience than if they ran home and they tell you, oh my God, like it was so good. I had a breakthrough. And the partner's he's been with the kids or she's been with, and they're like, okay, that sounds good. Like, and that can be a letdown because they're all excited and their partners wasn't, it's kind of like you joke, I guess you had to be there,
Yeah.
you know? So anyway, that was a long answer.
No, I love it. So my background is in family work, and social work also hits on a lot of the systems thinking and
Yeah.
systems work.
Yeah.
And seeing the family as a system, and the original space was working with kids with their identified client,
Yeah.
and then we're treating the whole family as a system. And so
Yeah.
then we're working with the parents, working with every kid in the family, and no matter how many there are, everyone's involved in the treatment. And it's interesting with couples because I like to say that the couple itself is an emotional system. So how I start off sessions is we're all meeting together and I meet with them individually because I'm saying I
Yep.
want to get to know the parts of the emotional system to
Okay.
then know what it's like when we're all in the room together and what we're seeing. And
Yep.
you're right, it is so beautiful to be able to witness someone have
Mhm.
a breakthrough or be really
Right.
intimate with their partner and actually witness the raw beauty of that. I think
Yeah.
it's the most unique thing at this job.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that then they're having that experience together, right? And then the positive association of that they take with them. Again, the brain is an association device. It's a pattern seeking device, right? So you can tell me all day long you've had these amazing things happen, but if they're there, they're more believing and they're associating it with this. Like we were both in the room when she recognized that thing or he recognized that thing.
Mhm.
One thing I've been doing lately that has been very interesting, I do it when I feel like it's right, is I facilitate a conversation between them where they interview each other for an hour and I feed them the questions. Like I just tell the person the question and then they ask it and I make them talk to each other about it. And it really it's one of the best sessions I've ever most of the sessions are pretty good, even with the people that are really disconnected, because
Mhm.
I add the questions as I go, but I would think about, but most of them are similar in the sense of asking people, you know, where we been, how we got here,
Mhm.
what do you believe about your relationship?
That's a powerful
And
question.
people stumble with it, but I tell them, I set it up where like your job is to wrestle with these questions.
Mhm.
Ask the question, don't interrupt them, don't look at me and say like, can you give me a better question? Just let it sit and let's see what comes up. And you and I are just listening, and I call it, the map, right? So like we're listening to their map, and we're trying to find out where they're
Mhm.
lost, not where you'd like them to be, but where they are. Go find them. But
Well,
my favorite question, back to the what we were talking about, is so somewhere along the line when we get to core values and emotional being and how each person is contributing to these things. But one of my favorite questions is ask how is what's happening between you and I and the trouble we're having relate to your family background.
and to have the couple asking each other this question.
It's really powerful. And people then start to reveal, I think, more. And I think that's more meaningful, right? If you and I in religion, we're doing this and I'm over there. And
Mhm.
I'm like, huh, how does it relate? I'll have to think. And, I've learned pretty well to learn. I'm not going to talk. And whoever talks first loses. So don't, like, I look at this person like, just let them think, and even the most sort of stoic or whatever. And it kind of comes out. And when it comes out, like, they'll start talking about, yeah, you know what? I guess it's my dad. I guess, they'll go
Mhm.
on to the thing, right? And they're getting that thing. They're getting that thing. One is they're getting relief because the person's reaction has been way over the top compared to what they think it should be. They're
Mhm.
restoring it's a historical trigger, which is relational, and the brain is going, oh, yeah, this is the pattern. But I always say that then I turn that into like, that's the mission. That's your mission.
They say that we marry our unfinished business.
That's
And
right.
so when you say that that's the mission, it's like the mission is to start to create the new patterns that you know so well so that you adapt to a new kind of familiarity in your relationship.
Mhm.
Like if the image and likeness of an intimate partnership most likely resembles a parent-child relationship,
Right.
it's like we're trying to
Yeah,
heal that in ourselves. Therefore, we choose a
that's
familiar
right.
partner who then it's almost like we're trying to do that in the relational space.
I think um, it's a dream and a nightmare
Mm.
all wrapped together, and and it doesn't go with what I like to call the myth of romance, right? It doesn't match the media that whether you're a boy or girl you grow up with, that it's boy meets girl meets boy, they fall in love, they grow up, they have baby. It's a circle of life. Kids kill parents, kids kill sex,
Mhm.
cycle. But essentially, like, the myth of romance says if you love each other, people think there's not going to be conflict, there's not going to be problems, there's not, right, that like we must not love each other then if we have problems. And for the first 2 years it looks like the movie, because the movie is all about the obstacles are not the couple, they're the village people or the mother-in-law or the wicked witch or
Mhm.
whatever theme you want to pick.
There's a third.
And yeah, right. The movie concludes, right? It concludes they're together, happily ever after, sunset, credits roll. And that's pretty much what we have as the story. And so when you're dating, first 2 years feels like that. You're on point, man. You are like, paying attention. You're not on your phone. You're calling them. They text you, you text back. You text back probably as fast as you possibly can. Like,
Mhm.
so the attention span, it feels wonderful. It looks like the movie.
Yep.
But then they get married. And then long-term relationship familiarity kicks in, patterns kick in, right? I always love to ask the transitional stages, like when you guys moved in together, what was that like? Because they're going to start showing up. Essentially, what we were talking about before, you said that sort of the mission is like most people reveal some version of I'm not good enough. There's some insecurity like that. And I think it's expressed in different ways. But to me, what a partner's role is, I can't be responsible for your happiness. I can't be responsible for that trigger, but I need to intimately try to understand it and recognize that in you is a person who's trying to redeem that piece. And what a beautiful way to love somebody that when it comes up in a relationship is to speak to that. That's my mission. I'm not responding to it. I'm not responsible. You need to
Mhm.
do the work, but when you come in interaction with me, if I have that now as a lens, that's what I'm doing. So, I mean, I learned that my wife came with that message. I came with that message a different way. I got to be thoughtful and careful about. I don't want anything that I say to her to hurt like for
Mhm.
her to feel not good enough. And when you hurt someone like that, right? It's very, very painful in a relationship. And I've been married 31 years and I want her to feel the safest with me, not the unsafest.
Yeah.
Right. You probably can hear that that's like authentic because, I always tell clients, I don't look now. I learned this stuff. This is wisdom because of pain.
Mm.
It's not, I didn't read this in a book.
Pain is the greatest teacher.
It's coming for all of us.
Mhm. Ain't it true? I think about where clients or couples will often struggle with being on that same side, even though you're the person that I feel safest around, then you're the person that I also punch the hardest
Right.
because I feel like you're not going anywhere until people do.
Mhm.
How can couples maybe start to see it differently?
Yeah. I guess the way I think of it is that like if we can reorient and reframe that the problem is the problem, not the person, right? Like I think I try to tell people like you're not the problem. Because most people come into a therapist's office because she wants him to feel comfortable and not ganged up by a typical female therapist, right? And he thinks, man, I'm gonna go in there and get like killed. So one, he sees me, he's like a little relaxed, he
Yeah.
relaxed a little bit, but like I will tell that guy, you're not the problem. The problem is the problem, right? And what the problem is how what it means to everyone. So
Mhm.
if you're drinking too much and you change your personality and because it does change your personality,
Mhm.
right? Even though people deny that. Like I would say like, okay, well go to a bar, you can't drink that night and just start talking to people and see how stupid they sound.
Yeah.
She's trying to locate it in you and blaming you and you're blaming her and you're defending yourself. But if you could reverse, the problem is what that means to her. It's not about you drink too much or right. It's about, okay, it means I can't have your presence or I'm scared that
Mhm.
you're going to say something. I think it's reorienting them to be against the problem together. It's all about connection. It's a problem because I'm trying to achieve something, safety, secure. I'm trying to achieve something, usually, to make sure I feel okay. I'm probably complaining to you, but really the problem is what I'm not getting. And
Mhm.
then, of course, people suck at complaining in relationships. They just attack, right?
Yeah.
And they attack people's character and motivation. And, how can a person not be defensive? And they just get stuck in that conversation. It's the most insane conversation we all have, as opposed to flipping it and being like, hey, it would mean a lot to me if we could just spend 20 minutes walking every night and having a conversation, versus like, you never walk with me. Like, if you want somebody to change or give something up for you, you have to, I was, I don't know where I got this statement from. I have like all these quotes in my head all the time. So if I didn't attribute it properly. I apologize,
You do the
but
same.
anxious and or angry pursuit is never seductive.
So that one
I'm
more time.
like anxious and or angry pursuit is never seductive.
Never seductive in that it'll never really give you what you want.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You push the person further away by trying to talk them into it, persuade them, be angry at them, be anxious at them. I mean, and people wrestle with, we know attachment styles, right? Like anxious attachment or avoidant attachment or
Mhm.
whatever. So like if you're in the anxious attachment side and you're flipping out because the person's avoiding and they're shutting down or they're being very slow to get back with you, what you have to really do is go to war with the anxiety and take care of it yourself as much as possible. You got to be very thoughtful that like this more space you give that person, they can come back and talk, but you don't have to give up. It's not like giving up boundaries or requests, it's just how you do it.
Right. I like to say that if there's a generous interpretation under criticism, it's a need that hasn't been
Yeah,
met and
that's
they're
right.
trying to
An
get
unmet
it
need.
an
Yep.
unmet need. And then underneath defense is shame because
Mhm.
now I feel like I have to defend my character. And so then when it's the criticism and defense cycle, it's going at how can we reframe the criticism to a request?
That's
Hey,
right.
you never go on a
Flip
walk
it.
with me. I really miss us and I want to spend time with you.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I like starter phrases. Like I find ones at work, and that one for me is it would mean a lot to me if we
Oh, I
could
like
go on a walk together. I just want to spend some time. It's softer. And it would, I think people generally like that. No one, I don't think most couples wake up, I want to like fuck with my partner today. They're
mhm,
just living their life, right? So they're defending what they did unintentionally
yeah.
and they're being told that they've done it intentionally. But I think most people do want their partner to be happy. If you invite, it's invitational versus accusational. If you invite that, it would mean something to you. Oh, it would mean something. Your ear kind of goes with it, I think. Oh,
I think what's interesting now is that modern relationships, modern marriages, they're such a choice. Like a choice is the primary factor now, whereas before it might have been around financial security, just more
right.
basic needs that have been met. And now marriages end because I could be happier
Right.
rather than this truly isn't working.
Right.
And if someone's in the do I stay or do I go, things are fine.
Mhm.
They're not wonderful, but they're not abysmal either.
Mhm.
Then where would you say they should start?
They're just in this sort of like melancholy
Yes,
or whatever.
case of the blast is what I like to
Yeah, I
call it.
would start with connection, right?
Mhm,
It's gotta be, that's the context of everything. The more, so the counterintuitive thing is if familiarity is the problem, right? We're drawn to the familiar.
mhm,
That's the underneath therapeutic problem because we're trying to resolve the past, redeeming the past. Okay, that would be really amazing if a couple was understanding that better. That alone would be connecting to have someone see you and hear you and understand, like, oh, I see this moment. I'm going to try to speak into your life differently, right? Like if you're aware of
mhm,
that, right? But if familiarity is the problem, formality is the answer in my mind, right?
mm,
So, right, they get into a relationship, which then becomes familiar. Like
mhm.
my joke for this is, you bought a new car, right?
Yes.
No one's going to eat in this car,
Yeah. Yep.
right? 3 months later, this is
Totally.
the human condition.
Yep.
We are, oh, it's just French fries, or it's an old car and you need to get it cleaned again, and right,
Uh-huh.
that's the problem with everything. Like going on vacation is great because it ends.
Right.
Like we love going to New York City, but we kind of know in the back of our minds that would be very different than living there.
Oh, yeah.
Right. So I think the problem is that all relationships then become familiar. And then the old patterns emerge. Now you're playing out patterns with that your parents and all that stuff, right? And but you're busy with life, work, and man, that family development stage of like young kids and careers, right? Usually what happens is, you know, the couple doesn't nurture their relationship inside of that, right? And so connection goes down, conflict goes up. It's inflexible because when people are not feeling connected, then they demand consistency, but they don't get it because the other person's right. So you back way up and say, well, let's start with structured, intentional connection. Like it's a garden. When are we
Mhm,
weeding this garden? When are we watering it? When are we fertilizing? What are we doing to nurture this relationship? And that's like sacrificing some for time for the kids. They'll be okay. Like literally, you guys have to do it, and it could be fun. And I try to make it creative because I don't like the whole date more theory, right? This is not just going to a restaurant and eating together. It has to be having fun together. Play. It's almost playful and kid-like.
yeah.
Like go do something that you would probably never do. Like, go to a go-kart track, right? Go play some video games together. Do some crazy like kid-like things or get a project going together, right? Because you guys have to spend time being connected. That's what your relationship is built on, because you like hanging out together. Because as connection goes up, flexibility goes up, and consistency can live in that space, right? But that contextualizes all the sort of mundane, whatever the mundaneness was.
Mhm.
Now they're having positive association with the partner. But before they were negatively associating the mundane with the partner. It's the brain, right? It is associating all the time. So like, but obviously eventually I would not come because I would associate you with pain. I wouldn't be with you because you're causing me pain, or it's too hard, or we're boring, or yeah, you watch TV all night and I sit here on my phone and that's not connection. So like, right, on and off.
Yeah. Yeah. That what I also hear in that is creativity, because it's having a sense of passion in life that then gets brought into the relationship. And that does take a bit of creativity, especially with people who are raising young kids, because now your whole schedule in your life is revolving around other young humans who
Yep.
can't take care of themselves and who might have baseball practice and
Right.
art and everything else in
Right.
between and whatever back to school night there is. So
Yeah.
then it's, how do we put ourselves in this, and how do we nurture that garden? How do we
Right.
start to make ourselves a priority so that it does feel like we have that connection,
Mhm.
and you are special to me.
Mhm.
Like we matter so much to each other that we make this intentional time.
Absolutely. It has to be, and it's quality over quantity. That's the key. But that's, I think people are like, well, I don't have 4 hours this Friday to be, we can't go out for 4 hours on Friday night. Like, that's what people think is going out, probably, right?
Totally.
Which is great, but so they don't do the 10 minutes in the kitchen
Yeah.
because they're thinking, well, we don't have time.
Mhm.
But that's where quality comes in, right? Because, if you set your phone aside and you really look at someone and say, hey, how are you doing today? How's things going? How did that meeting go?
Mhm.
How are you feeling about it?
Yeah.
Like, and you don't go anywhere else. They're not doing this in passing, like, hey, how'd that thing? Like really, like, let's connect intentionally, right? And it's got to be that kind of connection. And it can be 5 minutes, but people feel seen and heard, and that could work through little ways. It could be like, I don't know how many guys have programmed their phone on their reminder list. Put this on your fucking phone. Like, hey, at 10 o'clock, send her a text.
Yeah.
I was thinking about you this morning.
Mhm. Totally.
Like who cares how you remembered? You remembered.
It's thinking relationally.
Exactly.
It's an
Yeah.
intentional practice to start to think differently in that way.
Right. Those are
So
the things, by the way, right, we do in the first part of the romantic part. You're motivated by this animus of love and all that stuff, and then life squeezes you out. It's not that you don't like, it probably still feels really good to send that and have a person like it, and so that means so much to you, thank you, or whatever they say. It's the practice of it is good, but life after 5 or 6 or 7 years of marriage is you're not as naturally thinking about that all the time, because you're almost like, well, that we established that, we're working on this now,
yeah.
but people still want to hear it.
Yeah. It's something you can always come back to. Yeah.
It takes 2 seconds to turn everything around.
Totally.
People are not, unless they're just so traumatized or jaded, you know, or have met someone else and they're in love with someone else now. And even then, sometimes they always wanted that from you.
Mhm.
If you give it to them, I think it could really turn things differently,
Yeah.
between the two people.
Yeah.
Small touches.
It's I think there's a Gottman podcast called Small Things Often.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
They're the bid for connection. Yeah. Yeah. It's so interesting, right? Because there's so many people that don't get how, when someone comes to talk to you, the rule I have for that is every conversation, the rule you need to follow every conversation is about connection, not content. And most people hear the content and respond to the content. It's natural. It's normal. Like, yeah, I get it. Like, if somebody comes to your work and says the fire hydrant is exploding, they don't want you to be like, "And what's that like for you?"
Right.
Right. You want you to grab the phone and call. Most people that we are, you know, interacting with all day long, that's what they want, or they're fix a problem, deal with something, right? But
Mhm.
relationships in terms of like the friendships and romantic relationships we have are not like that. That's not why they're talking to you. We're talking to each other because, like, why do I tell you a funny story? Because I want to get something from it. It could be I want to get some validation, I want to get some good feelings, I want to make you laugh, or like that's all connection.
Mhm.
And a lot of times in long-term relationships, it's missed where like, well, I mean, I'm so tired of you like talking about this job. Maybe you should just quit. Versus like, like just sitting with it. They just want to hear and let them talk.
Mhm.
So if you respond to connection, and that's the one time they were like, no, 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 I actually was wanting you to give me advice.
Yeah.
They're not going to be mad that you responded to connection. But
Right.
almost to me, it's like if you just follow that rule, you're way better off already.
Yeah. I have been thinking about this idea of differentiation a lot
Mhm.
for couples because thinking about Ellen Bader's work and how she says that differentiation will actually bring couples more together. That if couples can learn how to look at someone's work problem as theirs,
Mm.
and that hearing about it may make you feel frustrated, but to insert yourself into their problem and bring your frustration into it, then you're clouded with two people's perceptions, emotions, and you're not really having a back and forth.
Right.
It's all kind of this simultaneous explosion, so to speak.
Yeah.
So the more that one person can see the other as in themselves and
Mhm.
their own problem and their own emotions to then be able to listen, hear it, and
Mhm.
understand it, the more they're able to then put their own stuff aside to then be able to be steady and listen to it.
Mhm.
And then it's going, tell me about that for you. What's keeping you in that job that you complain about all the time? What is happening for you?
Mhm.
What's where
Right.
do you want to stay or go? Like then you get to have a sense of
Yeah.
curiosity rather than a sense of I'm so tired of hearing this. Why don't you fix it
The
already?
only thing that's even needed there is curiosity.
Hmm.
Like, I always think of it as like, once you're there, it's the easiest place to be. It's like a pocket, right?
Yeah.
You're not in charge of fixing them at all. You have to just let them figure it out. They're talking to you because they want someone to see and hear them and their frustration and the way they think about it and what they want to do about it. And that's all it is, really is. It's unfortunate though, but sometimes these silly little talking about your job or this person at work and how they're pissing you off. I mean, we've seen the movie, couples get like, they miss it. They're like, God, I'm so tired of hearing you talk about this. And then they're disconnected, versus like, yeah, you've been talking about that guy. Like, you think anything will change or like what do you think about it? You really just want to know what they think about it. How easy is that?
It's
Right.
yeah. It's a practice.
So one of my professors, because I went to an online school, most of the professors were clinicians actively working, right?
Right.
Um, so in the residency where we went for a week was in Jackson, Florida. He'd been probably a therapist for 30 years or whatever. He has a practice called On the Brink or something. Like it's all crisis people, right? But he talks a lot about super curiosity, and then that's essentially builds deep connection between people.
Mhm.
And to date him, he said, just get in the phone booth with people and look around and be like, yeah, it is dark in here. Wow, it is tight. It's kind of warm. And that's what curiosity is, right? You're letting them talk about their perspective and you're keeping your perspective out of it. And, I would say like there's a problem they come to you with and there's solutions. And you actually everyone's brain's pretty good. The solutions may be pretty obvious, but in between those two things is relationship, and that's that moment every time. I'm sure people tell you this, like I just stopped talking to them about things because there was no audience there.
And I like even the visual of a phone booth because it really is this sense of like, wow, if I were to see this from your lens, now I can have a sense of empathy and understanding for what you're going through.
Mhm.
And I can put my stuff aside. Like I I also like to say then whether it's in couple sessions or just in general, I'm like, yeah, the key is being able to put your own shit aside. And if you can do that and
Mhm.
practice that, then you'll be able to be more connected,
Which is your differentiation.
which is the differentiation part. And then
It's a
it's
good
like,
Scrabble word too.
yeah, it is a good Scrabble word. I'm like, say that 10 times.
Yeah.
But then people say, but what about me?
Yeah.
And then there's this inner I call it the inner 2-year-old that's like, what about me? And then they're crying out for that. And I'm like, it's going to come back. Like,
Yeah,
it will come back. Just take a breath, take a moment, let it be about the other person. You get to be in that with them and
that's right.
massage that point to then have it come back to you.
Yeah, imagine if your job was just to listen
Yeah.
and ask questions. Like, you don't have to go fix the software. That's your job. So, I think everyone struggles with this a little bit, but in most, at least heterosexual relationships, men tend to miss the cue that female partners usually are definitely wanting to connect about that, but they really feel hurt and invalidated when, that person that they're talking to says, "Well, I already told you what to do and you just didn't do it," or like, "Why are you talking?" Yeah, like they kind of they find some rejection about that, or even if like I know you know what you should do is, and they take over. Right now they
Mhm.
are making it about them, right? And you
Yeah.
have to do one at a time. You may have, and even if the conclusion is the same, one guy told me like, "Yeah, but like I knew the answer, and then at the end of that conversation, we got to the same answer." I'm like, "Yeah, but what you're not understanding is like that conversation is what means more to her than the solution's insignificant. The
Mhm.
solution is the connection.
Yeah.
Like there's some common problems that we talk about. There's no solution. I mean, if you have two jobs and you're stretched and two careers in the house and one person's complaining about the job, but if that she quits or he quits, it'll devastate your situation. You can't quit that job.
Mhm.
So those conversations about those jobs that you can't quit, the only thing that's going to help that is I see you, I hear you, I know you're struggling, right?
Yep.
And it feels like, thank you, why? It's sometimes your person. They want to tell you. And if you're bad at being their person, they'll stop telling you.
That is so true. They'll want to stop connecting with you and
Yeah,
then
because it
they'll
hurts.
feel indifferent.
So um, there's an old quote, and whenever we do for others what they should be doing for themselves, we harm their self-efficacy.
Mm.
That fits really well with parenting, fits really well with couples. I'll tell you what I would do is not validating. You know, it's not even encouraging, right? Like if we were friends and you were like, Christian, I'm having a horrible time with this person, this client, whatever, like, until you ask for my advice, the point of you talking to me is you wanted to express something you were feeling, and then you just want questions asked of you. That feels great. Like you can do this on your own. You don't need your partner to do your job. So that's not what it's about,
Yeah.
right? So I mean, it's a big one because if you can get people to be curious, like curiosity can cure so much. You can't be curious and judgmental at the same time.
Right.
Although I would like to see Will Ferrell try to do that on SNL where he's curiously judgmental. I think he can pull that off or something, man.
Yes.
But they're different. They're really different emotions,
Mhm.
and you can't be curious and critical. Can't be curious and mean.
Yeah.
Like so, curiosity is like the cure for so many things. And if you just be open to ask more questions, and like that comes from also being secure, right? Imagine if I was feeling responsible for everyone's success rate in their marriage or in their relationship or their life. I mean, it can be.
That would be too much responsibility.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had a supervisor tell us in an addiction setting that if you're responsible for someone's failures, you're responsible for their successes too. But a
Yeah.
lot of times we'll take on the failures and then we'll give them the wins, but you can't take one without the other. And so you have to like relinquish it
Mhm.
all. So it's kind of interesting to put that spin
Mhm.
on it too.
Mhm.
Can I ask you something? Because you mentioned before that seemingly you have wives bringing their husbands in.
Right.
And lately I've been doing more research around men's work
Okay.
and men's mental health.
Yep.
And there's the Richard Reeves work around Lost Boys and
Okay.
how there's,
Mm.
I mean, men, 3/4 of deaths of desperation come from men. 1 in 7 young men right now in the UK are not employed, educated, or in training.
Mm.
So, and this is rising all across the West. 58% of college students are women.
Wow.
They've been outnumbering young men for years now. I think over a decade.
Wow.
So, and I'm a single woman in my 30s. I have friends who are in the same boat.
Right.
And they're all looking around going, where's the emotionally available guy who's ambitious and maybe we see like the same in terms of wanting a family and attractive and works out and has his shit together.
Mm-hmm.
Where are they?
Yeah.
So,
So living in your mother's basement.
well,
Yeah.
so then that's where it kind of is like 90% of women online are going after the same 10% of men.
Right.
Yet on dating apps or on Hinge, 64% of users are men,
Mm.
while the
Mhm.
remainder are women.
Right.
So there's a lot of skewed variables here. But then in couples work, even,
Mm-hmm.
it's women coming in and going, I don't feel like I'm getting my emotional needs met by my partner, and I don't know what to do.
Mm.
And so you mentioned that it's like you're a guy.
Right.
So it feels disarming to then go in with, okay,
Right.
you can talk to each other too, or it's not feeling like it's two women against one guy.
Right.
What is happening for men? What do you see? What's going on in some of these relational dynamics? Because we're talking about men's vulnerability, but
Yep.
I think where we missed out on the conversation is inviting men into the conversation around vulnerability. Instead, I hear more of a blanket criticism that men need to be more vulnerable, and that's just it.
Yeah. Which, if they hear that, what does that mean?
Right.
I think it's yeah, I think you even have on the front page of my website something about like you don't have to give up your masculinity to do this work. Because I think men are raised still, even in our society, to be producers. They're competitive with their other male components. Like, guys are not on the golf course going, "Hey, Gary, how you doing? I know you've been having a hard time lately." Yeah, they're not talking that way, generally speaking. So I think somehow we have to invite them into the space that vulnerability isn't giving up necessarily, whatever you think makes you manly or masculine. But, the way I do it in session a lot of times is like, you like women, not dudes. Most of it. Yeah. I mean, I know you already are because you're here with their wife. He's like, yeah. What are you talking about? I'm like, women want emotional connection.
Hmm.
And that only comes with vulnerability and being emotionally available. And it's not weakness to show her how much you care or how you feel inside or that you're scared or that like this frightens you. But a lot of times they don't have that language because they're not allowed to use that language or they just didn't grow up using those words. Right. Like I can say them pretty well now, partly because I'm a therapist, but partly because, I'm trying to be more and more vulnerable in my own life. But like it's outside of ego. And it has to be, I think, where you just are you're willing to share what you think. I always tell women, ask him what he thinks, he'll tell you what he feels.
Yeah.
This is really scary. Like, he just told you, like, I'm just really scared this is gonna work or whatever, right? But it's just about getting outside of yourself and being willing to share, you know, your thoughts and emotions about any given thing. And that's very connecting to your partner. How do you see it?
I see it as I almost want to redefine masculinity and add vulnerability into the definition.
Mhm.
I think that spaces for men in particular are shrinking. And so young men in particular, are losing solid male role models.
Mhm.
And how do we know how to do this if we're not able to do it in
Mhm.
these spaces where we're among men that we can trust?
Right. And the voices that those disenfranchised 20-year, 30-year-old men, right? There's gangs out there that are
Yeah.
welcome now. They're not living this in Detroit, and probably the Crips and the Bloods are not recruiting them,
Mhm.
but the far right is.
Recently, I had someone say, hey, a few of my friends are in these red pill communities.
Mhm.
They're starting to be on the fringes of that.
Mhm.
And I haven't experienced someone say that to me firsthand. And now that it's starting to feel like it's hitting like
Mhm.
closer into
Yeah.
people that you know or know of,
I've
it's
seen
scary.
people are getting divorced over this. I
Cool.
had one woman kick her husband out of her house because it goes to the heart of values because the message generally is seemingly that, in order for us to get back what we're feeling we're losing here, whether it's our whiteness or our privilege or our status in society or whatever, like, well, we have to beat back the things that progressed, which we all know is like, no, no, lift all boats.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah. I mean, we should speak to them vulnerably too. Is like, hey, maybe you have been disenfranchised. Maybe the message is bad, right? Because there's definitely people on the other sides that have said that.
Yeah.
They're making everyone feel bad and guilty rather than explaining, like, hey, giving women power and equality didn't take anything away from you. It
Mhm.
just feels that way if you think of it that way. And
If you think of it as a zero-sum game.
yeah, a
In the
scarcity view.
right, and
Yeah.
in the US, we don't hold nuances very well,
Right.
and the idea that it's one versus another, it 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 loses all meaning around, like, what true, like, social justice work is, because it's an idea that we can all be in this together for a similar mission, rising tides lift all
Yeah.
boats, and I think about how we can maybe start to bring men back into the conversation
Mm.
and what that might look like.
Yeah.
And I say start to bring them back or start to bring them in just in general.
Yeah. I mean, we have to, right? Because we know how important, like, what you believe life is about,
Mhm.
and what makes you worthy and have human dignity. Yeah, I mean, we need to redefine that, right? I think it's like what we're seeing an overreaction to the criticism from probably our community about toxic masculinity, right? So we're shaming. You hit the right thing about shame. Like, I think you're shaming these guys. You're telling them they shouldn't make jokes about girls in the locker room or whatever however that came out to them, as opposed to a more gentle conversation, probably that's not always so sensitive. It's right in the middle, you
Mhm.
know? And that's hard to navigate, right? Because there's too many microphones, you know? And unfortunately, like, it's in terms of the work you and I do, is like, if they're in the room, we can do it.
Mhm.
But getting them to the room is going to be hard.
Yeah.
You're so spot on about yeah, we love the binary, but to me, that goes back to that. Okay, the brain's addicted to certainty. It loves binary.
Mhm.
All of us do. It's easier. I don't have to think.
Right.
Whereas Walt Whitman's like, you can think or you can judge or be curious. This thing was right. Like,
Mhm.
curiosity means, I wonder why this is. You know what I mean? And asking questions, but that takes work. It's
Yeah.
so easy to go. And judgment, you get a hit of dopamine and you figure it out, and that person's bad and this person's good.
Right.
Easy. Let's go eat lunch, like, let's think
Yeah.
about it.
And I think we're in a space where we need to think about it with way more nuances.
Yeah.
'Cause the I think the one that's hitting hard is, like, the 3 and 4 deaths of despair, like, so you're like, that's a pretty high number, and if we're kinda going off that, I mean, part of the reason why the life expectancy rates have been declining are because of young people dying over suicide or addiction, and then if you're talking about men having 3 and 4 deaths of despair, then we're talking
Say
about a
more about that. I'm
significant
familiar with the depth of this.
the deaths of despair are around typically around suicide.
But
So deaths of despair, depression,
yeah.
mental health,
Yeah.
like those types of
Mhm.
occurrences. And if we're looking at just, if I'm thinking about it just in that point of view, it's like, okay, we really need to start to be taking this very seriously
Yeah.
into consideration, because I think what we're really talking about is like young men, but also then boys,
Yeah.
because they're the ones who are growing up to be an age of men.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it's a problem because, how are they being nurtured? How are they
Right.
being held? Yeah, because they grow up still like all men. We still grow up thinking like provision, right? Like, that's the job. And I think men do spell love RESPECT.
Mm.
I think women spell it TIME. Right. So with the one-legged stool still, even though women are working and with most households now are, two incomes, all that stuff, um, men still think that's my role.
Mhm.
I think it's primal. I think it's biological, probably on some level too, right? And they do that pretty well. But then their partners like, yeah, but they're in therapy, and usually in some version of like, but look at all the stuff I'm doing for you. Look at the money I'm providing. They're pointing to all these things, which a lot of those women will turn to them and say, yeah, but I wanted you.
Mhm.
Like, I got the car, but I don't see you, can't drive anywhere with you in it, right? Because you're too busy. So the other three, so if it's a three-legged stool, one of them is provision, the
Mhm.
other's presence, and the other's partnership. And, I think men are not understanding that there's like, what is presence that's like really nurturing?
Mhm.
It's not giving up your strength as a man or whatever you feel like you're really bringing in that way,
Yeah.
right? It's the calendar in Barnes and Noble. I forget which calendar it is. There's there's two calendars we talk about. I don't know if I saw this one on the same calendar, but it's like this big black guy with really awesome muscles, just like real fit, holding the tiniest baby.
Yeah.
And I think that that's the
Mhm.
juxtaposition, right?
Yep.
Like strong nurture, leadership, open, like I'm
Yes.
open leadership. I love you so much. And I'm gonna go out and figure this out and we'll come back and talk about it. And I want you to be part of the decision. So I'm respecting you and I'm getting the respect, all of that stuff, right?
Mhm.
But the other calendar that sells really well this is my Barnes and Noble days,
Move us.
uh, is the Porn for Women calendar. Have you ever seen this?
I hear like the tropes of the firemen.
Yeah, you probably have those, but no, it's called Porn for Women, and inside of it is like, all good-looking men, but like doing laundry, like folding clothes, washing dishes, taking the kids to the park, right? Like it's that juxtaposition,
Yep.
right? And it sells pretty well.
I've been hearing more about chore play
Mhm.
and that becoming more of a thing. They're like, "Oh, I am so turned on if I see my husband doing the dishes." And you're like, okay,
Mhm.
chore play.
Yep. My wife, a couple months ago, I don't know, instead of complaining about the way something was done, I just started working on it, and she goes, "Wow, that's a very attractive. Like, you just took care of it,"
Yeah.
you know? And that, it's one of the love languages, right? Like tasks and partnership all go together there.
Mhm.
Do you think though that like, so one of the things I'm mindful of, and something you just said sort of reminded me of it, is I do think there's also this thing in especially men's mind that therapy is bent towards the woman's desires.
Yes. So I've seen a few posts around this,
Yeah.
and I think in a lot of ways, yes. So interesting because like therapy in historics was like, you have Freud and Jung, and it was like the land of men. And now I
Mhm.
feel like that because there's so many women in the field,
Right.
that then the kind of more modern
Right.
thing has become more feminine.
Right.
And it's coming out soon, but I did a podcast with this guy, Justin Karate, and I think there was a quote that I heard that was like, we're treating men as if they're defective women when it comes to their emotions.
Mm.
And I'm wondering if the therapy space is doing that in a way and maybe not fully honoring again that full systems
Right.
picture. Of course, all these like progressive things and the rise of feminism have been wonderful. And how do we then also bring men again into that
That's right.
conversation?
And
Yeah.
and how do we not get it to be overcorrected?
Right.
Because what we see in society is an overcorrection all the time, right? So that
Yes.
now they, with diversity and equity and inclusion, which the opposite of those are
And
unanimity and exclusion.
yeah.
So, and I mean, weirdly enough, I mean, these used to all be fringe voices, but I even know I've heard like, on social media or whatever, like there are a group of people that literally want to get to a one household vote again. And they're probably pretty small, and I don't think they would go for it. Can you imagine that?
No,
Right?
this
Like
is
that's what they want to do.
horrible.
But that's obviously they, are ill informed, but also probably feel threatened.
Yeah.
So maybe there should be more talk too about like what is that healthy sexual dynamic between men and women, and especially like, and you boil it down to the work you're doing with the people in the room, which
Yes.
but or if you do it on a podcast or something. But I guess maybe there is the reciprocal nature of that. I mean, I think sex for men is transcendent. It's the opposite of death, and to have their partner want that with them,
Mhm.
they like not pity sex, not obligated sex, but like that they want to be with you in that way. I think it's very, very motivating for men.
Mhm.
And it's often the first thing that goes off the table when trouble starts. And I get that. I don't think anyone should be having sex out of obligation or duty. And it's when I mean sex, it's not even just the act of sex, the whole thing.
Right.
Affection, touching, being
Mhm.
present in a feminine and a romantic way between two people, holding hands and all that can go together. I'm not talking about just sex. But I think we do a disservice too if it's like, there is a reciprocal nature of it, and most women are contextual or responsive in their
Yeah.
sex drives. And I get that. And so, yeah, it can feel like sometimes guys are like, well, it's all about this stuff, and obviously if they give that stuff, they'll get that stuff. But I
Mhm.
think that there's, sometimes I try to speak to that by creating like erotic time for them and I'll say like to whatever level, no one should be forced to do anything.
Right.
But are you willing to do this? Like it's a silly assignment, but I turned the Gottman 6-second kiss into, I call it a full frontal non-church hug that lasts for 6 seconds.
Oh, I love that.
Yeah. And you do it when you leave and you do it when you come home and any other time that it makes sense to do. But, like
Yeah.
it's more than a handshake, it's more than the peck and the kiss. It's the let me hold you for 6 seconds.
Mhm.
Let me just cheat, chest to chest. We know the oxytocin works there, like everything. Like sometimes if the couple's in trouble and he's feeling like, she don't want to have sex with me, and he's like, well, he's just mean and like that. They're caught in that. Like, if I can say, well, would you agree to this?
Mhm.
Could you like do this as a nod to where you want to get to?
Yeah.
And I do think that that's asking the woman who might be, I'm off the table until you do X, Y, and Z. Like, I try to convince them, like, this is to me, like, doesn't mean everything's fixed. This is a handshake towards where you want it to be,
Mhm.
you know,
Yes.
sometimes people like people talk to me the most about that sometimes with it. Oh, you guys doing the work? Like, oh, with the hugs.
I love rituals of leaving and then
Yeah.
reconnecting. They're so important. So I like how you
Structure.
described it.
Structure.
Yes.
It's formal,
Yes.
like, it's weird because we do it in polite society. Like, if we went to each other's house, you probably wouldn't yell, "It's open," right?
Right.
Right? You'd take my coat, I'd hand you my bottle of wine, and you do the formal like, and our family comes home that we say is the most important thing, and we're like, "Oh, I didn't even know you're home."
Mhm.
And they're trying to talk to you, and you're like, "Hey,"
Yeah.
it's just breeds contempt.
Absolutely, and it's a sense of ambiguous loss. Does my presence matter to you?
Yeah,
Do you wanna see me when I come home?
right.
Then there's an ambiguity there, and
Yeah.
then I feel hurt, and I feel like that there's a loss of us, and
Mhm.
if I don't have the reconnection of us, then how do I know that we are secure and that we're a unit?
That's right, and one of the rules is whoever's in the house, their partner comes home, you hear the garage door open, or the front door, whatever, stop what you're doing and stand up and go greet them with the hug.
Yes.
Stand up.
Yep.
And if you can find the one spot that you do it on a regular basis, but how nice does that feel? Like you were working on something, you set it all aside, you stood up, you walked towards them as they were coming through the kitchen.
Mhm.
Like that says, I'm glad you're here.
Yeah.
Right? Welcome.
What a
Better than a guest.
what a wonderful feeling that is, right?
It's not about the space, it's about the people.
So true.
Mhm.
One last point I want to hit on, because I think what we're hitting on is like the three types of intimacy, like the thoughtfulness, the physical intimacy, and the emotional intimacy. And I hear this again, we're talking a lot about like the heterosexual relationships. Women will say, I think about us and what you need and what the family needs, and that I'm carrying so much of the mental load and the emotional load. Men will say, I think about us all the time. And I think about us in terms of work and finances and what the next move is going to be. And the thought that I often had is yes, but if your relationship wasn't here, you'd still be after those things. You'd
Mhm.
still be after the next promotion. You'd still want to make more
Mhm.
money. You'd still want all the like
That's
your
right.
retirement fund and all these things. So then what's different? You're thinking about how it is for your family,
Yeah.
but then how does that translate into what's different? Because what she's saying is, I'm doing all of this for us and for the family. And if
Right.
I stop doing those things, you're going to notice the difference. You're going to notice the difference if I keep doing the laundry and the laundry's not done.
Right.
Or if the parent teacher night that's
Right.
scheduled, I'm the one setting it up, if that's not completed and we don't show up.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, no. Yeah, so they feel like they have different priorities all the time, and that can be really disconnecting, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I guess that is I didn't think of it as priorities before.
and they blame the marriage for how they
Mhm.
feel, marriage gets so unhappy. Yeah, I think when it comes to that, it's more about like both of those people caring about what the other person is prioritizing, I think, and being emotionally connected about it. Or what's your like thought on it?
It's like one of those things that I thought of and then it almost ends there because I'm like,
Mhm.
okay, how do we how to so I've tried to couch it under the thinking relationally umbrella. When I talk with if men are like, yes, I'm thinking about us all the time, and I'm going, okay, I'm going to put this into the thoughtful intimacy
Right.
part of it. So expand on it and go like, see her, see what she needs, see like if you can break the frame and look around you
Mhm.
then what's happening relationally.
Right.
Because if it's thinking about how a lot of times it's around like work and finances, I think that this
Mhm.
starts to come up because when it's I think about us all the time, but it looks like what you're doing for you, and that's how it's presenting, then it's like,
Maybe.
how do I bring that into then the relational
Right,
space and
but
say what's happening
okay.
around you?
So now I'm putting myself in the shoes of that argument with
Sure.
people, and he's like, "What are you talking about? Like, if we don't have this investment word, there's not going to be laundry." And she's in the moment of like, "But I needed help today, and you didn't connect with me." And so I think maybe the value there for both people is like, because I think a lot of get like if the guy's in charge of the money and he says, "I really want you to sit down with me and go through this." There's a lot of women that refuse. You take care of that. I don't want to know. You know what I mean?
Interesting.
Like maybe there's some value in like, well, he wants to talk about this. He's talking about something. It's a great chance to be curious about like, well, show me what you're doing. Why? Because he wants respect. He just went out and killed a fucking moose and it's out front. And you walk in the door and he's like, "Hey, killed a moose." And she's like, "Yeah, great. I got like dinner going, and you were supposed to be here 2 hours ago." He's like, "Could you come look at the moose?" And she's like, "I
Yes.
don't care about mooses."
Right. I'm juggling too many
It's
things.
all reciprocal. Context can determine who gets that attention first. I think men really want respect and they want admiration from the person that they're in love with and that loves them, and they're not getting that sometimes in those contexts. So the things that he's talking about, they're really important to him, and if they're important to him, they don't have to be important to you. It is just curiosity to know why it's important to him.
Because then I'm hearing it as a it's not putting in a hierarchy of, whose, way of thinking about us matters more. It's, I see you and how you think about us, and now I wanna get curious about how that's happening for you, and
Correct.
can you do that same thing for me?
That's right, because we are both having the same marriage with different experiences, and each
Yes.
experience is valid. And that's what people are looking for to be validated. And there should be a way where both experiences can be understood and shared versus having to be pitted against each other.
Mhm.
Because, people will blame their marriage for everything. If I get to a place with a couple where I think the only thing that might help this is a physical separation short term for the purpose of reconciliation, what I'm trying to do is get their brains to see that. Have you ever seen or read the book The Trouble with Fleischman? Or
No.
Fleischman's in Trouble, I think.
No.
And they did like a pretty good film on it, and it's just about this like couple. They're living in New York, and so like very entertaining in terms of that kind of stuff. But they're really
Mm.
going, she's really disenfranchised with the marriage and all that stuff. And I had the quote somewhere, but like towards the end of the book, the narrator, who is the author of the book, says it turns out whether I was married or not, like your statement, I was always going to gain weight. I was always going to get older. I was always going to wrestle with this career. I was always going to like all the things that she was blaming the marriage for. Those, like you said, they were going to happen anyway.
Mhm.
So maybe your brain's making a mistake and associating it, but association is really, really hard because we don't even know it's happening.
Yeah.
It's almost like it's the other sense we have.
Yeah. It's untangling you and me.
That's right.
It can be hard when you're working with someone day in, day out.
Mhm.
Managing a household, managing a career, the daily life activities that come with it, and then if
Mhm.
people have kids and their parents on top of it, all that comes
Mhm.
with just how the busyness of life can be.
Yep. I mean, that's why, like in my work, I ended up creating this thing I call the huddle, and it's living 7 days at a time intentionally. On top of all of those things that you're saying you have to do, when are we going to be connected, and what does that look like? And we have to schedule those things so we can look forward to them. If I can, I'll get a couple to schedule their sex life. Like,
Mhm.
right, especially if they're saying it sucks. I'm like, well, so are you wanting more sex, or are you just going to stick in the suck? Because everyone doesn't want to schedule it. Of course, I was joking, like, you always scheduled it. Time you went out, had a little drink, we're going to go home and
We break the frame of it was used to be spontaneous and exciting because there was always a tee up for the getting ready, the date, for what happened at the end
right,
of that date, and it may be being in sex. So yeah,
right,
so it's interesting to kind of almost like break the frame for people and go that it
yeah,
can be fluid and part
yeah,
of life. It doesn't have to be always the separate thing. It has to be spontaneous and the most magical and the most everything.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So living intentionally, that's the practicality of it is you have to have a plan and a strategy because you can't you can't have these epiphanies even if you agree with something and then, just shrink back to homeostasis. Life is like that. We just sort of like, people say like, well, we were going to a therapist, it was better.
Mhm.
Well, yeah, because you were more intentional because it was on your mind. It was different that week because you had that great conversation. So people made a little more effort.
Mhm.
Well, we got to put teeth in that, So like, the huddle, which I actually want to turn into an app one day. You're gonna sit down, huddle for 20 minutes. You can walk through these questions. What's on your plate? You go through it. When are we gonna spend time? Here's the 20 minutes we're gonna do and look at it all and bet. What do we do with the kids and everything? What are we doing to stay connected, to nurture our relationship, to feel close to each other? And that if you schedule it and you actually do it, a high probability that you're gonna feel more connected.
Yes.
Right? So people that schedule sex, couples that I can get to do that, maybe they boil it down to once a week. They're gonna have what I always call it erotic time. Like it's
Mhm.
about sex, but spending that kind of time together. Like maybe you give each other massages and talk and you just lay there and you ended up not having intercourse, but like you really felt like that was what it was for. Those people would be like, I'm like, "You doing it?" I'm like, "Yeah, it was really nice," and then right, like, "Why?" Because it feels good, and you're being contextualized. So, yeah, then spontaneity can happen because the walls are down, and,
Yeah.
yeah, you can get a quickie in somewhere because now you're building the connection. We think of
Mhm.
families where we let our hair down and we can just be ourselves, and we don't but you're not, it's another job.
Especially now, I mean, families stay together because of the happiness of the
That's right.
couple. There's a lot of weight that a couple in a relationship
That's
carries.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any other final thoughts or things you want to add?
No, I thought this was a great conversation.
Me too.
Yeah, I feel like, we covered a lot of ground. Hopefully it resonates with somebody out there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, come see us.
Yeah. Anything that you want to plug?
I have a workshop coming up on the 10th of May, from 10 to 3. It's focusing on finding and understanding the mission in your partner's life and like why you're together, like what's your role, and help people think through that. And then of course we talk about communication and conflict and all that stuff. Includes lunch.
Nice.
Yeah,
That's great.
you can find it on my website if you want.
Yeah. And I'll also put the link in the show notes so
Yeah, of
people can
course.
find you
Yeah,
there.
yeah.
Yeah.
Do
Well,
you have anything going?
I'm going to be doing a dating course with
Cool.
a therapist, Dr. Lori Husband. She's also a friend of the podcast. And
Nice.
yeah, so we're going to be doing a singles and dating course. Yeah, so that's on the horizon. It's going to be like a 4-week type of online course.
Cool.
Yeah.
You're gonna call it like Hinge?
But it's like we're playing around with names. So so if anyone's got ideas, let me know.
Yeah, you should play off one of the app names, like try to come up with something witty there
Yeah.
because I hear so many people in my office talk about these apps or whatever. They all hate them, but in today's society, if you're not going to school or working, where are you gonna meet people?
Yeah. Yeah, it is sort of like the, metaphorical bar where people go.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah. Mhm.
Thanks.
Yeah, thank you for coming on. This was
Yeah.
fun. Until next time, stay connected.